My own sister betrayed me. That's why I left and why I never looked back for 12 years. I'm Blair. I walked away from everything I ever knew. From family dinners where my chair sat empty. From birthday parties filled with laughter that never reached my ears. From the people who said they loved me but whispered lies behind my back. They told stories, twisted stories, lies that painted me as the villain in my own life. And the worst part? The person I trusted most, the one I called sister, was the one who set the whole thing in motion. I still remember the day it all shattered. The way her eyes looked at Minot with sisterly love, but with cold calculation. The conversations that stopped as I entered the room, replaced by silence so loud it deafened me. For years after, I vanished. Not because I wanted to, but because I had no choice. I couldn't live in a house where my name was barely whispered, where I was made to feel like a mistake, a secret better left hidden. I moved to a small town far away, where no one knew my name or my story. I worked hard, trying to bury the pain beneath layers of normalcy. But at night, when the world went dark and silence wrapped around me, the memories came rushing back like a tidal wave. The forgotten birthdays, the empty rooms, the family photos where I was missing. It wasn't just loneliness, it was the ache of being erased, of being made to feel invisible in the only place I ever thought I belonged. But inside me, there was a spark, a stubborn, fierce hope that maybe, someday, I'd be able to come back not just to a place, but to the people I once loved. Now, 12 years later, I'm standing on the cracked sidewalk of the neighborhood I once called home. The air smells the same fresh-cut grass, damp earth, the faint hint of someone's cooking drifting through an open window. But everything feels different. I'm different. I'm stronger now. Harder, maybe. Wiser, definitely. But the scars are still there, just beneath the surface. In my hand, I clutch a small, worn-out box. Inside is a tangled necklacia gift I never had the courage to give. It was meant to be a bridge, a symbol of hope, a chance to heal what was broken. Now it feels like a waiter chain holding me back, reminding me of all the words left unspoken and all the wounds left open. I take a deep breath, trying to steady the storm inside me. The evening breeze brushes my face, but it doesn't calm the ache. Around me, life goes on. Children laugh in the distance. Cars hum along the streets. Footsteps echo softly on the pavement. But I feel invisible. No one here knows the battles I fought in the dark, the nights I wrestled with loneliness, the desperate hope that one day someone would remember Menot as a ghost, not as a mistake, but as Blair. This isn't just a return home, it's a reckoning, a chance to face the past no matter how painful. I'm standing at the edge of a door, one that could open wide and welcome me back, or slam shut and lock me out forever. But I have to know, because sometimes the hardest journey isn't the one away, it's the one back. And this time, I'm not walking away. Coming back wasn't just about returning to a place. It was about stepping into the shadow of everything I left behind. And that shadow was heavier than I ever imagined. For 12 years, I lived with a silence so loud it almost broke me. Not just the silence of empty phone lines or unanswered calls, but the silence of broken promises, shattered trust, and love that refused to speak my name. My family, or at least what was left of it, was a place where words like forgiveness and understanding were foreign, where the truth was twisted into stories that painted me as the villain. And somewhere in that web of lies, I lost not just my place in their lives, but also the part of myself that believed I was worthy of love. I remember the nights I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, fighting the voices inside my head. What did I do wrong? Why did they stop loving me? Was I ever enough? Those questions gnawed at me, endless and merciless. But amidst the pain, there was a quiet defiance growing. A voice inside me whispered, "You are more than their stories. You are more than their silence." I clung to that whisper as I built a life from the ruins, a life far from the hollow halls of my childhood home. I worked jobs I didn't love, but paid the bills. I made friends who didn't know my scars. I smiled when the world watched, even if my heart was bleeding inside. But no matter how far I ran, I couldn't escape the ache of being forgotten. When I finally stood on that cracked sidewalk, I realized it wasn't just the years that had changed me. It was what those years had done to the people I left behind. My mother's face flickered in my mind, tired, worn, eyes shadowed by years of regrets and guilt. My father, a man of few words, whose silence always spoke volumes. And Mia, my sister, the one who betrayed me, who I still didn't fully understand. Coming home meant confronting all of them, not just to demand answers, but to wrestle with the parts of myself I'd hidden away for so long. I thought I was prepared. I thought I was strong. But when I saw them again, the walls I'd built around my heart began to crack. My mother barely looked at me, her lips pressed into a thin line, eyes flickering with something I couldn't quite place. Was it shame? Regret? Or something darker? My father's silence was heavier than ever. He didn't speak, but his eyes held a storm I wasn't ready to weather. And Mia, she looked at me like I was a stranger. No warmth, no apology, just cold distance. In that moment, I realized this wasn't going to be easy. This wasn't some fairy tale reunion where wounds healed overnight. This was war. A war fought in whispers, in glances, in every unspoken word. But I wasn't backing down, because beneath the pain and betrayal, beneath the years of silence and heartbreak, I still believed in the possibility of something better, something real, and I was ready to fight for it. The weight of the past pressed down on me, but I knew I couldn't carry it forever. There was one truth I had to face. The hardest battles are often the ones within. The battle to forgive, the battle to heal, the battle to find my way home, not to a place, but to myself. And this was only the beginning. The more I tried to piece together the fragments of my past, the deeper the shadows grew. What I thought was a family torn apart by misunderstanding turned out to be a web of secrets and lies far darker than I ever imagined. It wasn't just a bitter feud between siblings or a broken family trying to mend itself. No, it was a deliberate act of betrayal, one that had been carefully hidden beneath layers of silence and denial. Mia, my sister, the person I once trusted with all my heart. I remember the first time the truth hit me like a slap in the face. A chance overheard conversation, hushed voices behind a closed door. The words sliced through the air, colder than winter wind. "She can never know," someone whispered. "If Blair finds out, everything falls apart." That moment shattered everything I believed. My world tilted on its axis. I was no longer the victim of coldness or neglect. I was a pawn in a game I didn't even know was being played. Days turned into nights as I hunted for answers, digging through old letters, forgotten messages, and memories buried beneath years of pain. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep the betrayal ran. Mia hadn't just abandoned me emotionally. She had orchestrated my exile. She had lied, manipulated, and twisted the narrative to make me the scapegoat, the one to blame for things that weren't my fault. The rage inside me boiled over, but so did the sorrow. How could someone I loved so deeply turn against me with such cruelty? But anger alone wouldn't heal me. It wouldn't fix the broken pieces or mend the shattered trust. I knew I had to confront her not just for the truth, but for my own peace. When I finally faced Mia, the woman I once called sister, the room was thick with tension. Her eyes flickered with something I couldn't read: guilt, defiance, or maybe a complicated mix of both. We didn't exchange words at first. The silence spoke volumes. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "I did what I thought I had to do." Those 4 words hit me harder than any betrayal. She was trapped too, caught in a web of fear, pressure, and mistakes. In that moment, I saw her not just as the enemy, but as a broken soul, just like me. The path ahead wouldn't be easy. Forgiveness felt impossible, but understanding maybe that was the first step. Because beneath the lies, beneath the pain, we were both searching for the same thing, a way back to each other. And maybe, just maybe, a way back home. The truth was messy, painful, and far from black and white. But it was real, and real was the only thing that could set us free. After the confrontation, I thought the hardest part was over. I was wrong. Healing wasn't a moment. It wasn't a single conversation or a simple apology. It was a grueling, exhausting process, a slow, painful climb up a mountain I didn't even know how to face. Some days, I wanted to scream at the world, to shout at Mia for every lie, every betrayal, every moment she stole from me. But those days were heavy with exhaustion, the kind that sinks deep into your bones and makes every breath feel like a struggle. Other days, the silence was worse. It crept in, wrapping around me like a suffocating fog. The empty space where love was supposed to be left me hollow, shaking with memories of laughter that felt so distant now. I found myself caught between anger and grief, two fierce storms battling inside my chest. And in the middle of it all was me, trying to piece together the shattered fragments of my identity. I started therapy, a place where I could unravel the knots in my heart without judgment. Talking about pain I'd buried for years felt like ripping off a bandage that had hardened around a wound. Each session brought tears, sometimes rage, often moments of clarity. I learned that healing wasn't linear. Some days I'd feel strong, like I was taking back control. Other days, I'd fall apart, overwhelmed by waves of loneliness and doubt. But step by step, I began to rebuild. I reached out to old friends, people who saw me before the betrayal, who reminded me of the person I used to be, and who helped me see the person I could become. I started setting boundaries with my family, a word I never thought I'd use. Saying no to toxic conversations, no to blame, no to the pain that wasn't mine to carry. And slowly, the walls I'd built around my heart began to crumble. But rebuilding isn't about forgetting the past. It's about facing it every ugly truth, every raw wound, and deciding you're still worthy of love. One evening, sitting alone in my apartment, I held that tangled necklace in my hands again, the one I'd brought back with me, a symbol of hope and hurt. I realized then that healing was like untangling this necklace. It takes patience, gentle hands, and the willingness to face the knot. I couldn't promise the scars would disappear, but I could promise myself this. I wouldn't let those scars define me. I was reclaiming my story. One day, one breath, one moment at a time. And as hard as the road was, I was finally walking it, not alone, but with the fierce determination to be whole again. Healing is not a destination. It's a journey, messy, painful, but powerful. And mine was just beginning. Just when I thought I had started to piece myself back together, the ground beneath me shifted once more. I discovered a secret tone so deep, so carefully buried, it threatened to undo every step I'd taken toward healing. It began with an old letter hidden in a forgotten drawer at my mother's house during one of the rare visits I forced myself to make. The paper was yellowed, the handwriting shaky but familiar. As I unfolded it, my heart pounded with a mixture of dread and hope. Maybe this letter held the answers I'd been searching for all these years. But what it revealed was more devastating than I could have imagined. The letter wasn't addressed to me. It was a confession written by my mother, to someone else detailing a mistake, a betrayal, and the guilt that had haunted her ever since. I learned that I wasn't the cause of the family's fracture. I wasn't the villain in this story. The real truth was hidden beneath layers of lies and silent secrets my family had kept to protect themselves, even if it meant sacrificing me. I sat there, stunned, the letter trembling in my hands. The betrayal wasn't just Mia's anymore. it was bigger. The people I had longed to return to, the family I thought had abandoned me, had been carrying their own burdens they chose not to share. That night, tears streamed down my face not just from pain, but from the overwhelming weight of knowing the truth. I realized forgiveness would be harder than I ever imagined. Forgiving my sister, forgiving my mother, forgiving myself for carrying the blame. The days that followed were filled with difficult conversations, some heated, others silent and heavy with emotion. My mother, finally free from years of guilt, broke down in tears. She told me things she had never dared to say before, revealing fears and mistakes that no child should have to bear. Mia, too, seemed different, the coldness softened by regret, her distance replaced with a fragile hope for reconciliation. But even as cracks appeared in the walls between us, the past still cast long shadows. Trust, once broken, doesn't mend overnight, and the path ahead was uncertain, filled with both hope and fear. I stood at a crossroads torn between anger and compassion, between the pain of the past and the possibility of a new beginning. This secret had shattered everything I thought I knew, but it also gave me something I hadn't felt in years, a chance. A chance to rebuild not just a family, but a future one where I could finally be seen, heard, and loved for who I truly am. And I was ready to fight for it. Because some truths are too powerful to ignore. And some journeys are worth every step no matter how hard they get. The secret was out. The truth that had been buried for so long finally saw the light of day. But revealing it was only the beginning. The hardest fight was just starting. The family I once thought was broken beyond repair now faced a new reality, one that demanded more than apologies and tears. It demanded change, forgiveness, and most terrifying of all, trust. The days that followed felt like walking through a storm. My mother, once distant and guarded, was now vulnerable in ways I'd never seen. I watched her wrestle with her own guilt, sometimes breaking down in my arms, sometimes retreating into silence. Her pain was real, but so was her fear that we'd never be able to heal. Mia and I tiptoed around each other, trying to navigate the ruins of what had been shattered between us. There were moments of awkward politeness, thin smiles, and carefully chosen words. But beneath it all, I could sense the tentative hope, growing, fragile, and uncertain. Outside the walls of my family home, the world remained harsh and unforgiving. Neighbors whispered, friends cast sideways glances. Some doubted the truth, some judged without knowing. It was a reminder that healing is not just internal, it's also a battle against the world's expectations and scars. But within me, something had shifted. The anger that once consumed me began to soften. The grief, while still present, no longer defined every breath I took. I started to see myself not just as the girl who was betrayed and abandoned, but as a woman strong enough to rebuild. I set new boundaries, protecting my heart and my peace. I learned to say no to conversations that dug up old wounds without offering healing. I learned to ask for space when I needed it, and to accept help when it was offered. Friends became my refuge, people who saw me beyond the past, who celebrated my victories no matter how small. Their belief in me was a balm I hadn't realized I craved so deeply. But the battle wasn't over. Trust, once broken, is a fragile thing. It takes time, patience, and courage from all sides to mend. There were days when I questioned if reconciliation was even possible, days when the past's shadow felt too long, too dark. Yet, every time doubt crept in, I reminded myself, healing is not a destination, but a journey, and I was walking it one step, one moment at a time. I found strength in the smallest victories, a shared laugh with Mia, a heartfelt conversation with my mother, a quiet moment of peace in my own company. These moments were the ashes from which I rose, because sometimes the fiercest battles forge the strongest souls. And I was ready to keep fighting, not just for my family, but for myself. Standing at the edge of the life I once knew, I realized that the journey I had been on wasn't just about healing my family, it was about finding myself. For so long, I defined myself by the pain, by the betrayal, by the silence that followed my departure. But now, I was beginning to see that those chapters didn't have to dictate my story anymore. Each day, I woke with a little more hope, a little more light breaking through the cracks of old wounds. It wasn't easy healing, never is, but it was real. I started setting new goals, dreams I had pushed aside for too long. I pursued things that made my heart beat faster, reconnecting with old passions, rebuilding friendships, even opening myself up to love again. The necklace I brought back, tangled and worn, no longer felt like a weight. It became a symbol of resilience, of the courage to come home and face the past, of the power to forgive. One afternoon, Mia and I sat together on the porch of our childhood home, the sun warm on our faces. The air was filled with a quiet peace, fragile but undeniable. We talked, really talked for the first time in years, not about blame or pain, but about who we were now and who we wanted to become. It wasn't perfect. There were still tears, moments of doubt, and days when the past threatened to pull us back under. But there was also laughter, understanding, and a slowly growing trust. I looked around at the people I once thought I lost forever, and I realized they were still here, flawed, scared, but willing to try. And so was I. The road ahead was unknown, winding and unpredictable, but I was no longer afraid to walk it. Because I had learned the hardest truth of all, that home isn't just a place. It's the people you choose to carry in your heart, and the love you give yourself along the way. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple, I felt a calm settle over me. This was my new beginning, and I was ready to live it fully, bravely, and on my own terms. If my story touched you, if you've ever felt lost, betrayed, or forgotten, please share your thoughts below. Your voice matters. Your story matters. Don't forget to like this video if it moved you, and subscribe for more stories that remind us all we're not alone. Thank you for walking this journey with me. What about you? What's your story of healing and hope? Share it with me below, because sometimes our stories are the bridges that connect us all.